Guadalajara, Mexico. March 2025. It started at 3:33 a.m., the dead hour. Carmen Mendez was jolted, awake by a voice drifting from the living room. It wasn't a cry or a whisper. It was a rhythmic, chilling chant. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, her blood ran cold. There was her 4-year-old son, Santiago, sitting perfectly still in front of a pitch-black TV screen. His eyes were tightly shut, but his voice was steady and unnervingly mature. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, ... He was reciting Revelation 13, word for word. Carmen's legs felt like lead. Santiago? Baby, what are you saying? The boy opened his eyes, but the playful spark of a toddler was gone. There was an ancient, heavy stillness in his gaze. It's Revelation 13:1, Mommy, he said quietly. They showed it to me last night. When Carmen asked who they were, Santiago didn't blink. He told her the angels had visited him. They told him he had to warn people that the golden-haired man, who had just returned to power, was the key to fulfilling ancient scriptures written 2,000 years ago. We all know who he meant. Just 2 months prior, in January 2025, Donald Trump had moved back into the White House. The world was already in an uproar over his return. But how could a 4-year-old boy who couldn't even read yet make a connection like that? Santiago, you've only been to church twice in your life, Carmen whispered, pulling him close. She could feel his little body trembling, not from fear, but from a strange sense of urgency. He isn't the bad guy, Mommy, Santiago whispered into her chest. He's just a piece of the puzzle. It's all part of a bigger plan, and I have to tell everyone before it's too late. The next day, things got even weirder. Carmen called her husband, Roberto, home from work in a panic. When he walked in, he found the dining table covered in papers. Santiago had been writing. In shaky, childish handwriting, yet perfectly legible, were verses from the Bible in both Spanish and English. Roberto, he's barely learning to write his own name, Carmen cried. Santiago looked up at his father, his expression dead serious. Daddy, listen. Daniel 7:25 says the little horn will speak against the Most High and try to change the times and the laws. President Trump is doing exactly that. Roberto was stunned. How do you know this, son? The dreams, Santiago replied. I see him signing papers. I see nations breaking apart and people fighting in the streets. It's all connected. He handed his father a sheet of paper. On it, he had written Revelation 13:5 about a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. Underneath, in his own simple words, he wrote, "The man talks a lot on the internet. People either love him or hate him. There is no middle. This is the sign." My God, Roberto muttered. Are you saying he's the Antichrist? Santiago shook his head firmly. No, Daddy, that's what people get wrong. He's not the Antichrist. He's the precursor. He's clearing the path, fulfilling the prophecy without even knowing he's doing it. He's just a pawn on God's chessboard. Terrified and desperate for answers, Carmen reached out to Father Miguel Torres, a Jesuit priest famous in Guadalajara for his deep knowledge of biblical prophecy. When the 65-year-old priest arrived 3 days later, he expected to find a confused child or overactive parents. He wasn't prepared for Santiago. Before the priest could even say hello, the boy looked him in the eye and said, "You don't think this is real, do you, Father? You think I'm just a trick?" Father Torres felt a shiver run down his spine. I didn't say that, son. You didn't have to say it. You thought it. Santiago sat down and pointed to the Bible in the priest's hand. Look at Revelation 17:10. Read it aloud. The priest opened his Bible, his fingers fumbling. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time, ... Double quotes. Santiago nodded slowly, like a teacher confirming a lesson. Trump is the 7th. The 5 who fell were the presidents who changed the world. Roosevelt, Kennedy, Nixon, Reagan, Clinton. The sixth was Obama. Trump is the seventh, the one who came, left, and came back. And this time, his time will be very short. The room went silent. Father Torres turned pale. He had studied these texts for 40 years, but he had never heard an interpretation that felt this ... surgical, this precise. And what happens next? The priest asked, his voice cracking. Santiago's eyes darkened. The eighth. The Bible says the beast that was and is not is also an eighth. Someone will come after Trump who will be worse. Much worse. And when that happens, we will know the end is at the door. The room felt cold as Father Torres stared at the 4-year-old. The boy's interpretation of Revelation was like a razor sharp and impossible to ignore. Santiago had just mapped out a lineage of world leaders that fit perfectly with modern history. Trump is the seventh, Santiago had said. The one who came, left, and returned. But his time now? It's going to be short. Father Torres gripped his Bible so hard his knuckles turned white. And what comes after? The eighth, Santiago whispered. The beast that was and is not. Someone will follow Trump who will be far worse. And when he appears, the end is no longer a shadow, it's the reality. When the priest asked who taught him this, the boy simply said, "I don't learn, Father. I remember. I remember what is coming because it's already been written." Father Torres knew he couldn't keep this a secret. He contacted the Archdiocese and the Biblical Institute of Mexico. A week later, Santiago was sitting in a sterile room across from a panel of 5 world-class theologians and 2 child psychologists. They were recording everything. Dr. Sofia Ramirez, a specialist in child development, tried to keep her voice gentle. "Santiago, can you tell us exactly what you see happening in the next few months?" The boy closed his eyes, tilting his head as if listening to a frequency no one else could hear. "In April," he began, his voice devoid of any doubt, "President Trump will sign a deal with 7 nations from the Middle East. He will call it a peace treaty. But it's not peace. It's the fulfillment of Daniel 9:27, the covenant with many." The theologians traded nervous glances. Dr. Ernesto Villalobos, an expert in apocalyptic prophecy, leaned in. "Why April, Santiago?" "How do you know?" "Because I saw the date," the boy replied. "April 18th, 2025. I saw the president with 7 leaders signing golden papers. And I saw that after that, something terrible would happen in Israel." He didn't stop there. He warned that 3 months later, in July, an event in Jerusalem would set the world's tongue on fire with the word war. He claimed Trump would think he had closed a door to violence, but in reality, he had opened a portal that could never be shut. The wait was agonizing. Carmen kept a calendar in her kitchen, crossing off the days with a trembling hand. Every morning, Father Torres would call, asking if the boy had seen anything new. Then, April 18th, 2025 arrived. Santiago woke up early that day. He walked into his parents' bedroom with a calm that was almost frightening. "Today is the day," he said. "Turn on the news." At 10:47 a.m., every major network broke their regular programming. There was Donald Trump in the White House, looking triumphant. Surrounding him were the leaders of 7 nations: Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, and Jordan. Trump's voice boomed through the speakers. "Today, we signed the most important peace deal of the 21st century. The expanded Abraham Accords will bring 7 years of prosperity and security to the Middle East." Carmen dropped the remote. Roberto stood frozen. On the screen, exactly as a 4-year-old had described weeks prior, 7 leaders were signing documents bound in gold. 7 nations, Carmen whispered, her voice failing. "My God, it's 7 nations." The phone rang immediately. It was Father Torres. He didn't even say hello. "Are you seeing this? Are you seeing what's happening?" Santiago was sitting on the floor, watching the screen with a serene, almost sad expression. He looked at his parents and spoke only one sentence. Now, wait for July. What comes next is worse. By that evening, the video was everywhere. The world was celebrating a historic era of peace, but in a small house in Guadalajara, a family was terrified. They knew this wasn't the end of the conflict. It was the beginning of a pattern that was 2,000 years old. Dr. Villalobos rushed to their home that night, his arms full of notes. "We have to document every word," he said, his voice shaking with adrenaline. This boy just predicted a specific global event, with the exact date and the exact number of participants. This should be impossible, but Santiago just looked at him with a faint, tragic smile. "It's not impossible, Doctor," the boy said. "It's inevitable." "It's not impossible, Doctor," Santiago had said with a heavy sadness. "It's just inevitable. It was always written." Over the next 2 months, Santiago changed. The playful 4-year-old was fading, replaced by a quiet, brooding child who spent his days drawing. Carmen watched in horror as his sketchbooks filled with haunting images. Ancient temples draped in shadow, pillars of fire, and sea of angry faces. These weren't the drawings of a toddler. They were pieces of a nightmare. Meanwhile, Father Torres was busy. He organized secret meetings with top theologians from across Latin America. The child prophet of Guadalajara was no longer a secret. Some called him a miracle, others a warning. Dr. Villalobos was obsessed. "What else do you see, Santiago?" he would ask during their weekly sessions. Santiago would close his eyes, his breathing slowing down. "I see the Temple Mount. I see a man in a uniform entering a place he is forbidden to go. I see the Muslim world erupt in rage, and I see the United States standing behind the fire. It happens in July." "What day, Santiago?" The doctor pressed. "I don't have a day," the boy whispered. "Only a window. After the 15th, but before the 25th. And once it happens, there is no turning back." On July 19th, 2025, at 6:32 a.m. Jerusalem time, the world stopped. Israel's Minister of National Security, flanked by hardline religious groups, marched onto the Temple Mount, the third holiest site in Islam. The footage hit social media like a bomb. Riots exploded across Jerusalem, Gaza, and the entire Arab world. 3 hours later, President Trump released a statement. Instead of calling for calm, he doubled down, supporting Israel's right to access its holy sites. The phone at Carmen's house didn't stop ringing. Journalists, cultists, and curious strangers were desperate for a piece of the boy. But Santiago was in his room, sobbing. "Why are you crying, my love?" Carmen asked, holding him tight. "Because I saw what's coming next, Mommy." He wept. "I saw the war. I saw the pain. It's all part of the plan, but it hurts knowing people won't listen. It could all stop if they just believed." Finally, the world came knocking in a way they couldn't ignore. CNN and Espagol wanted an interview. Santiago nodded slowly when his parents asked. "It's time, Mommy. We can't hide the truth anymore." On July 28th, in a high-rise studio in Mexico City, Santiago sat on a large sofa, looking tiny in a simple white shirt. Adriana Mendez, a veteran journalist with 20 years of experience, later admitted it was the most unsettling hour of her life. "Santiago," Adriana began, "people say you predicted the peace deal on April 18th. Is that true?" "I didn't predict it, ma'am," Santiago said firmly. "I just read what was already there. The angels show me the verses in my dreams. They show me that what's happening now was told thousands of years ago." "And what else have they shown you?" Santiago's eyes filled with tears. "A great war is coming. Not today, but soon. President Trump thinks he's doing something good, but he's accidentally opening the gates of the apocalypse. And after him, someone worse will come." "Who?" Adriana leaned in, the air in the studio feeling thin. "They didn't give me a name," Santiago whispered. "Only that people will love him at first. He will promise real peace. But he is the one who brings the end. 3 million people watched that broadcast live. The internet exploded. Skeptics accused the parents of brainwashing. Believers fell to their knees. But no one could deny the look in Santiago's eyes. A chilling, absolute certainty. Even the Vatican couldn't stay silent. The Pope issued a rare statement. In these times of confusion, remember that the Lord's ways are mysterious. True prophecy calls for conversion, not fear. Back in Guadalajara, Dr. Villalobos and his team sat around a table covered in Santiago's notes. They had mapped his 7 specific biblical references against world events. "Look at this," Villalobos said, pointing to a complex diagram. Daniel 9:27 for the April deal. Revelation 13:5 for the social media influence. But this is the most disturbing part. He pointed to Revelation 17:11. Santiago said Trump is the 7th king who was, is not, and came back. That fits. But the verse says an 8th will rise who is of the 7. It means the next leader is someone who has already held power, someone the world thinks is a savior, but is actually the final deception. Santiago, playing with blocks in the corner, looked up. His name starts with an O. People will think he's the hero. But that's when the clock finally runs out. Inside the quiet house in Guadalajara, Dr. Villalobos was connecting dots that were never meant to be linked. He laid out a timeline that looked more like a blueprint for the end of the world. Santiago isn't just quoting the Bible, Villalobos whispered to Roberto and Carmen. He's decoding it in real time. Look, Trump fits the 7th king perfectly. The one who was, then wasn't, then returned. But the prophecy in Revelation 17:11 says an 8th will rise from among the previous 7. Someone who has already ruled, someone the world will welcome back with open arms. Suddenly, Santiago looked up from his toys. His voice was small but heavy with a terrifying certainty. His name starts with an O. People will think he is the savior sent to fix the chaos. But he isn't. When he returns, that's when the clock hits 0. The room went cold. Obama? Father Torres breathed. Santiago just shook his head. I only saw the letter O. I only know that when he steps back into the light, the final act begins. October 2025. 3 months after the world saw him on CNN, Santiago woke up screaming. This wasn't a nightmare. It was a transmission. I saw it, Mommy. I saw the sky. When Father Torres and Dr. Villalobos arrived, Santiago described a vision that would change human history. He told them that in August 2027, a signal would appear in the heavens. It wouldn't be a comet, a planet, or an eclipse. It would be something science could not explain. A massive cross of light, visible from every corner of the earth for 3 days straight. In those 3 days, Santiago warned, everyone will have to choose faith or fear. It is the sign of the Son of Man. But here was the twist, the great deception. Santiago claimed that after this event, the leader who follows Trump, the one starting with O, would claim he was the one who caused the sign. He would use the miracle to manipulate the world into following him. Carmen was in tears. Why you, Santiago? Why a child? Because adults have already decided what to believe, he said with a tenderness that didn't belong to a 5-year-old. Your minds are locked, but children, our hearts are still open. God uses the small to confuse the great. Dr. Villalobos was scribbling notes until his hand cramped. Is there any way to change it? Can we stop the war? Santiago shook his head sadly. You can't change what's already been written. You can only choose which side you're on. The first seal was broken the moment Trump took office again. There is no going back. By December 2025, Santiago turned 5. His visions began to fade, but the shockwaves were just starting. His story had reached millions. Books were being written. Forums were buzzing with Santiago's timeline. Then, something happened that silenced the skeptics. A group of NASA scientists reached out to Dr. Villalobos in secret. They had detected a massive, unprecedented electromagnetic anomaly scheduled to interact with Earth's atmosphere in August 2027. It was a phenomenon never before seen in recorded history, something that would create atmospheric light displays visible globally. The exact month and year, Santiago had predicted. The pressure built until the church couldn't ignore it. Father Torres organized a final gathering at the Cathedral of Guadalajara. 2,000 people packed the pews, and thousands more stood outside. Santiago climbed the pulpit, looking like a tiny speck against the massive gold altar. "I came to tell you something important," he began, his voice amplified across the square. "Many ask if President Trump is evil. He is not. He is just a piece. We are all pieces on God's board. What is happening isn't the end of the world. It's the beginning of the end. And there's a difference." He looked out at the crying faces. "There is still time. Time to change your heart. Time to choose love over the fear that they are going to feed you." The silence inside the Cathedral of Guadalajara was deafening. 2,000 people held their breath as 5-year-old Santiago stood behind the massive wooden pulpit. He looked tiny, almost fragile, but his presence filled the entire hall. "Choose love over fear," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "When you look up in August 2027 and see the sign in the heavens, do not panic. Do not let the world's chaos consume you. It isn't a threat, it's an invitation. It is the final call before the door closes, a moment where every single person on this planet will have to stand face to face with their own soul and decide where they belong." Tears flowed freely down the faces of the crowd, theologians, skeptics, and parents alike. Santiago looked down at his small hands and then back at the people. "I have delivered the message I was sent to give. My work is done. Starting tomorrow, the visions will stop. I will become just a normal boy again. I will go back to my toys, my games, and my childhood. But you you will remember. And when the events I told you about begin to unfold, you will know that you weren't left in the dark. You were given a warning. You were given time." With a final innocent smile, Santiago climbed down and ran straight into his mother's arms. Carmen held him with a mixture of relief and a lingering, profound sadness. She knew the weight her son had carried, and she knew the world he was growing up in. By late December 2025, just as he predicted, the visions vanished. The child prophet of Guadalajara retired from the public eye. Today, Santiago lives a quiet, ordinary life. He plays in the park, laughs with his friends, and is learning to read like any other 5-year-old. But inside a locked wooden box in his bedroom, his parents keep the maps, the dates, and the handwritten verses that shook the world. They are the artifacts of a future that is already in motion. The scientific community is still reeling. Dr. Villalobos continues to correspond with whistleblowers at NASA, who confirmed that an unprecedented electromagnetic anomaly is indeed approaching Earth, set to peak in August 2027, the exact month Santiago had named years prior. They call it a natural phenomenon. Santiago calls it a divine sign. We are now living in the shadow of those prophecies. As world leaders move like chess pieces across a board they don't truly control, we are left to wonder, was Santiago just a child with an overactive imagination? Or did God truly choose the smallest among us to deliver the most urgent message in human history? In August 2027, the sky will give us the answer. Until then, the clock is ticking. Fade to a slow-motion shot of a child playing in a field under a vast setting sun. The world is changing faster than we can comprehend. Whether you believe in the prophecies of Santiago or see them as a haunting coincidence, one thing is certain. The events of 2025 have set a path that no one can ignore. Is the return of the golden-haired man truly the seventh seal? And who is the eighth, the one who starts with an ode that Santiago warned us about? We are only a few years away from finding out. What do you think? Is Santiago a window into the divine, or is this all a grand misunderstanding? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story as chilling as I did, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world as most impossible cases. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and your heart open.